of the first things we're going to do is, you guys have noticed there's a little buzzer on your table. So through the day, we're going to try to keep you guys both entertained, engaged, and awake. So I'm going to ask you some questions. If you can just quickly give me those answers. Through the day, the results of the poll we'll be discussing. So the first question that you see up there. Okay. I think you can all read it, but if you can't, menstruation is a woman's issue. Just a yes or a no. You gotta love the music. Okay. All right, the next question. And please do click the buzzer, do answer, because this is really important for us to see. So how many men in the audience have bought sanitary pads? If you're a woman and you know your husband has done it, your son has done it, your brother has done it, please answer as well. Well, we have a really evolved group here. Try to be honest, everyone, please. The next question. Now, this is relevant given the context of the day and the second half of the day's proceedings, but as a woman, have you used any other product than a sanitary napkin? Okay, surprises everywhere. The final question. How many of you have discussed periods with parents when you were young? Okay, so I think the point of us trying to do this is set the context for the first panel session that's happening, which is spot on shifting the MHM narrative. It's really going to talk about the work in the space, how people perceive it, and for that, I would like to ask the moderator, Neera Nundy, the co-founder of Dasra, to lead and invite the panelists up on stage.
Hello. Okay. Thank you, Krishna. So we're going to ask all my esteemed panelists to come up onto the stage, please. While you're waiting, you can look in your booklets, in your folders. You'll find the speaker profiles of why these people are so esteemed. We're going to change it up a bit, so while they're coming, I'm going to actually moderate from the audience. This mic is working or not working? So weird. Yeah. Hi. So it's gonna be distracting for me to walk around, but it's to keep you awake. But it's also to help my panelists be able to speak to you about our exciting opening panel. Before we jump into the panel, I want to have you focus on an exercise. So everybody close your eyes, please. While you have your eyes closed, think about the past, a moment in your life where menstruating, your period, someone in your family, something you saw, was the first time you were exposed to this biological phenomena. Just take a few minutes to remember. You have to close your eyes. Yes. Okay, now open your eyes. For how many of you, sorry, we're not going to use the polling thing right now. How many of you was this a happy experience? Hands up, happy experience. The first moment, yes. Okay, for how many of you was it confusing, maybe disturbing, not really sure? Lots. Okay, well, this is why we're very proud to have this day today. Thank you so much. I think what we're trying to do is give a lot more visibility to this issue, but also have it structured with context from different places and different people. You're clearly a very enlightened crowd from the initial polling. But the idea of the opening panel is to approach MHM as a chain. And so really thinking about this chain from awareness, access, use, facilities, and disposal. And what I'm going to have my panelists do is speak to their own perspective, where they have placed themselves potentially and their work either across this chain or particularly in this chain, and we'll hear the different perspectives from each of them. And then we'll have a bit of a conversation on stage, and then I hope you guys will have questions to ask. So we're going to open up with Poonam. Many of you know probably Poonam quite well. But Poonam, if you can just help us understand from your perspective, I know you've also had a lot of experience in sexual reproductive health, but also around awareness building. Give us some sense of how you have approached MHM and seen it in the sector.
So I've been grappling with this issue for the last 25, 30 years. It started with really trying to understand the whole issue from the health point of view, to begin with, sexual and reproductive health point of view. So the first study in India was supported by me on this issue, which Vanita Mukherjee, who works for the Ford Foundation, does. And after that, it's really been about the stigma around this issue. I've supported a couple of films on this issue, but we haven't really made much of an impact in terms of the issue of stigma. And I want to stay with the issue of stigma because it impacts people women in so many different ways. One is the education. The whole issue, the whole fact that according to the data, the recent data is 25%, but if you look at the UNICEF study from 2012 on menstruation, it was 45% of girls drop out from schools. This should be something the education community should have been focusing a lot more, and let's work towards that happening. Second, self-esteem. Again, whether it is the UNICEF study, we don't need a study to know how this impacts women's self-esteem, the fact that you're supposed to be impure in that period of time. And finally, I want to come to the health issue. Of course, we haven't dealt with, but we need to link what women experience within menstruation and the stigma, social stigma and so on about it, with their mental health, but what about their physical health? The first study that I mentioned that we supported shows that 70% women in Kerala, and we're talking about Kerala, where women have more empowerment, more access to water, sanitation, and health facilities. Some 70% of the girls' RTIs, reproductive tract infections, which was the focus of this study, was because of poor menstrual hygiene. And for women to be suffering from RTIs, it has impact on the fact that they can't use, apart from other health issues, but they can't use IUDs, for instance, if you have a urinary tract infection. An IUD, which should have been a very popular contraceptive in India, I believe due to poor menstrual hygiene, it hasn't worked, and it's a big tragedy for women of India who have to go through abortions or have unwanted children because this. So you know, the linkages are huge. There are many, many different ways women are not just discriminated, disadvantaged, and so on. And finally, I do want to say, in terms of if we really want to change, we've got to talk about having a menstruation day is a great beginning, but we really have to change social norms. Only when social norms change do individuals have the courage to change behaviors. Will mothers begin to agree? 68% of the mothers believe it's not right to speak to the girls about menstruation. They think it's almost initiating them into sex or telling them about sex. It's so related to sexuality too. And finally, I think not just in school, but everywhere we need to bring in awareness on menstrual, not just hygiene, but the issues around menstruation in terms of stigma and so on, into the Indian film industry, all communication materials related to not just gender, and finally we need to educate our men. Men have to be, it's not a women's issue. 92% of you, as Neera said, are enlightened, so I'm not impressed. I expected that. But we really need to put this as it's not just a women's issue, it is as much a men's issue, it's a societal issue. And society better take it seriously, including the health ministry, which imported the worst sanitary pads you could get from China. I don't mean to be anti-China. I promise you I'm not anti-China. I love the hair clip I'm wearing from China. I shop all over America buying Chinese goods. I'm not anti-China, but I'm absolutely against sanitary pads coming from China, low cost, poor quality sanitary pads which created huge issues for women. And finally, let's give a call. GST still isn't finalized. We've got to make sanitary pads 0% GST.
Thank you, Poonam. Radhika, do you agree with some of what, or all of you were nodding in such agreement, but give us your perspective as you hear also from
Poonam. For me, I think, do you want me to do that piece also now?
Yeah.
Or just,
No.
Okay, all right.
No. Do what you want.
Okay, can I go stand there? Because
Yes.
I'm a stand-up comedian and
Yes.
sitting down is very uncomfortable for me. So I'm just going to sneak past Ashok over here. Hello, everyone. I actually agree with everything she said, because to me, I always think, as a comedian, one of the things that I do a lot, just comes to me very naturally, is I tend to look at, a lot of my comedy comes from the battle of the sexes, or just from the obvious, it's a parody at this point, the gender discrimination in India. It's a joke. And so it writes itself, my material. And so yeah, the easy way out is what I like. And so I focus a lot on it. And one of the things I remember doing a piece for actually a sanitary pad company, where they asked me, about, what I thought, so to write a monologue for the product. And one of the things that occurred to me was that if men got their period, there would be hashtag no shame. There would be hashtag pride. Look at us with our period. They'd be in the locker rooms, how heavy is the floor, bro? Like mine's I'm in my 3rd day. Pansy, I'm like 6-day period, dude. I'm like a real man. There would be pride. There would be. That's just the way it is. But, also if men got their period, they'd be women. But that's a minor thing that shouldn't concern ourselves with rationality in comedy or in life. So for me, I think the shame that women just seem to, take on and then perpetuate to the next generation, that I think is one of the most harmful things. And so part of my excitement about comedy is that I can go on stage and talk about periods for 5 minutes and everyone has to just sort of sit there and take it. So that's what I'll do now, just briefly. This is a piece from my first show on Ladylike, where I talked a lot about getting my period and how exciting that was for me, actually. I know it's not. A lot of you women and some of the men put their hands up and said that the first time they encountered a period, it wasn't a pleasant situation. So let me just give you my perspective really quickly and then back to the panel. All right, so by the age of 13, I had actually concluded that I would grow up to be a man. And the reason that I came to this conclusion was the fact that unlike the rest of my female classmates, I was yet to experience my first period. It's a late developer. While all my friends blossomed into women who menstruated with great regularity, I lay awake at night, nervously knowing it was only a matter of time before my voice broke and my balls dropped. I'm sorry you've heard this before. She's heard this before.
Still funny.
So as far as I was concerned, this was a major handicap, and with all handicaps, there were reminders of it everywhere. Every morning, one of my boarding school dorm mates would wake up and gasp that a period had started. My classmates referred to their monthly cycle as their chums. Don't we all? We have all these names for it. We don't want to say period, except it's second period, third period, fourth period, and fifth. And then everyone's like, he said period. Referred to their monthly cycle as a chum, and someone was always going on about her chums or the accompanying chum cramps. They would merrily interrupt field hockey practice to inform us of how bad it was, clutching their sides, doubling over with pain, as all the other menstruators crowded around offering advice on how best to deal with the situation. I would try to be one of the gang. Girls, Nancy has a chums. She has chum cramps. Does anyone have any aspirin for chum cramps? She has a chums. Chums! Oh, how I long to be one of them. I was so curious about it all. How bad would these chum cramps be? Would I be able to handle the pain? And most important of all, why was I being singled out? I desperately wanted my peers to think of me as one of them, but I couldn't even pretend to be because I had one major problem. I had none of the accoutrements that went with womanhood, namely the sanitary towel or the ST, as it was referred to by those in the know. So we have to have code names for our shit, right? Because you know how we go and buy them even in like, Whisper kitna hai? Most girls my age had a package of these things which their mothers had given them just in case. Not me. My mother did not believe in building a dam for a river that did not flow. And I would hazard a guess and say that most mothers are like that. They're like, until she's fully bleeding, what's the point of bringing this up? Right? Instead of when you have a bunch of children, which most Indian women tend to have, why don't you sit them all down and tell them about it, whether they are going to get their period or not? Like if it's a boy or a girl, what difference does it make? Just make this part of the day-to-day life in your family, you know, a discussion about that. Anyway, so this piece sort of goes on in that vein, all to say that when I did get my period, I was very excited. Like, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I was finally part of, you know, the group of girls that all had their period. But the only person I could inform of this development was my dad, because he was the only one with me at the time. And he was very uncomfortable with it. So he would have been one of the men who was like, when I was first confronted with a period, I was very uncomfortable. My daughter had only me to depend on, and I didn't know what to do. But we figured it out, you know, between him and I was 13 years old, he was 43. But I mean, I don't know, maybe things would have been very different if I had had the conversation with my mom, if she had given me the pads. All to say I'm from a very privileged background, educated people, and I have the same exact problem, based on my story, that every other girl in India has. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking of enlightened dads, we're going to hear from Ashok. Thank you for representing your gender. Share some of your personal story and, yeah, jump right in.
Okay, I'm going to step back a little bit. I think it all started with running away from home when I was 18 and living in villages for 3 years. Village to village to village, sleeping under trucks. And I think the reality of India really hit me, and I understood what this country was all about. That really was the starting point. I think the turning point was when my daughters were, the elder one was 12, I was financially in a mess, and I had to spend money on sanitary napkins. And I think that's when it really dawned on me that I had to cut something out of the family budget. The only thing I could cut was alcohol. Not for too long, a couple of years till I, earned enough money to do it. But that made you realize the impact you have when you have a wife and 2 daughters, and what it costs at even the cheapest Carefree or whatever it was in those days that you could get in the market, really affected people. And connecting it back with my background and where I'd lived, one started realizing, how bad this problem really could be. Well, that was 30 years ago, and about 15 years ago, I owned an ad agency and I worked on a huge brand of sanitary napkin. And I had to deal with, I get very involved with the products I work with, So I had to work with heavy days, light days, actually sit behind black curtains and listen to social groups. Because if you don't do that, you have no clue what you're talking about. And this young executive, and when they got to the pricing, I said, what about all the people who can't afford this kind of stuff? Because this is a big multinational company. He says, forget about them. They can't afford it. We're not bothered with them. Let's talk about the 10% who we want to sell this product to. And that sunk in. And it sunk in really deep, but stayed somewhere on the, beneath the surface. And about 4 years ago, I got into a technology with a partner who's invented a bacteria-killing fabric. No chemicals, no leaching, no toxins, mechanical killing. It's unique. We shifted the company to Switzerland. We patented it worldwide. And that's when the trigger came saying, we filter water with it. We've got about 25 million people drinking our water. Said, how do we use this for sanitary protection? So we've invented the world's first bacteria killing, and it's non-stop bacteria killing. So it kills yeast, helps with, UTIs. It kills odor, because that's caused by bacteria. And we said, if we can convert this into a low-cost product, yet make it look like a 5-star product, which is washable, reusable, kills bacteria, kills odor, stain release, because people don't have water. Where do you wash it? How do you wash it in a mug? Quick dry technology, which like Nike Dry Fit, dry on the. So we literally put everything into it and said, we have 2 caps. There's a commercial cap with which we do a lot of other business and make, hopefully, money. And this is the CSR part of our world, which we said is critical. If you can't do this, I mean, what's the point of creating products for only the rich? If you're not able to get down to the masses. So we've spent 2 years deeply involved in sanitary hygiene issues, working with NGOs. We raise the money through CSR funding. We give it free to NGOs. We get them to move it on. And this product's being tested, Environmental Protection Agency USA for the technology. We got NITRA, CITRA, MITRA, South India Textile. We've done all the testing, made sure it's skin safe, it causes no damage, etc. The first 50,000 have rolled out. And then take the full cycle. It's actually, one has used all one's learning and business talents. So start off with saying, what's the problem? What are the priorities and the issues the girls are facing? And how can we put a technology solution for each one of those? And what's the benefit for that? Literally, business structure. Create something end to end which delivers. You can't solve all the problems. I can't take away the cramps. But if I can take away 8 or 10 of the problems, we've got something down there. And if we can deliver this at 150 rupees to solve a girl's problem for a year, you're talking about 12 rupees a month. And when the volumes go up, it'll come down to 10 bucks. So this is the problem we're talking about. And these are already rolling out. I mean, we're stepping it up to probably 1 million a month in terms of production, hopefully very soon. But what one realized is the lack of awareness. And the great thing is to see numbers like that on the chart of the number of people here who are not just aware, the men are aware. So using, again, one's advertising background, one went out and said, let's create a campaign. Online campaign is also run on TV. And we created a concept called Give Her 5, give her back 5 days of school. Why should a girl miss 5 days of school? That's 20% of her education, like you said. How on earth do you get through school if you're going to miss 4 or 5 days? So if we can give her a 12-hour protection system where she can go to school and it kills bacteria, works morning to night, you help at least give her back 4 days of school. So the Give Her 5 campaign is what we ran. It's been running online. We've got films. We've got all kinds of stuff done for it. And we've raised enough funds for the first 50,000 sanitary napkins in less than a month to start rolling out. And we've got, if there are 3 billion women in the world who can't afford sanitary napkins, we have a long, long journey to go. So the good thing is we've started on it, and I'm not giving up.
Great. Thank you,
That's
Ashok.
it. Thank you.
Please, Madhu, go ahead. I mean, we speak to We speak to this chain often. I know you often speak to the sanitation chain, so I don't know if we're drawing parallels, but we've heard from Poonam, from the sort of development side. We heard a personal story from Radhika, which applies, across demographics. From Ashok on the role of, private sector, how that can apply. Help us bring this all together from your perspective.
Okay, so I don't know how much everyone knows about what we do, but at the foundation we work on sanitation. We call ourselves the WASH team, but we really focus on sanitation. And we view sanitation as a value chain from product, that is access to products, or where you can contain the waste, from extraction of that waste to transportation and then treatment. And I believe menstrual hygiene squarely sits at all parts of this value chain. You have to make sure that women have access to the product, and we heard from Ashok about some of the innovations that he's doing. And I know that from a personal story because I started using cloth pads when I started. And I'm fairly old, as you can tell. And I know the horror it was. I was one of the people who raised my hand when it wasn't a very pleasant experience. It was actually quite confusing. It was a very cumbersome process to contain the flood of blood. As you grow, then you realize, I unfortunately don't have a daughter, but even so, every time you have to cringe and you live in a house of men and you worry about how you're going to present this message of, I'm actually incapacitated for the next 2 days because I can't get up from bed and I'm, in pain. And having gone all through that, I understand what it means, and what you need is clean water. Every woman needs it. You need privacy. And exactly to what Poonam said, or to Ashok's point, how do you do that for a woman when she's living in very close, cramped quarters, maybe just with men, her father-in-law, mother-in-law, all sorts of people? So how do we make this access issue is beyond just giving somebody a product. It's about giving the whole infrastructure around menstrual hygiene. And I think nobody's really thought about it. Even now the discourse in sanitation is around open defecation, which of course, but it's not about what extra burden women have to bear for those 5 days of the month when they are, undergoing their cramps or chumps. So I think it's a very, very important, significant part of the sanitation value chain. And we concentrate both on access to product. We don't have our strategy completely figured out, but we know that we have to intervene at all aspects of it. We need to ensure they're good products. We need to ensure there's good infrastructure for women. So when, say, community or public toilets are built, do we have enough disposal, privacy, and access to water for women who need that? I'm not sure what we can do at the home level, but I think working on social norms is very important to break that so that women in the home are supported. People understand this is a natural biological process. It doesn't put women at a disadvantage and shouldn't. In fact, she needs a lot of support at that point of time. And then we need to really worry about disposal. Because not only do we have fecal sludge to dispose, of which only 30% is safely treated, so that's a statistic I hope everyone goes back with. But there's also the whole issue of menstrual waste. And we've had a lot of discussion at our MHM Alliance, and if you are not members, please join. I think Krishna and others can help you join to talk about this issue. But the discourse is, should this be treated as biomedical waste? Should it be treated as waste segregated? Then who are you harming? Is somebody going to take this waste and actually segregate it? And how do you dispose of it safely? Should standards of the product be changed completely? Are incinerators a good idea? And we know that because we also know that going to school, even in good schools, disposal of sanitary waste is a huge issue. If the bin is full, who's going to empty it? Who's going to come and take that waste out? Is it supposed to go into an incinerator? Is that safe? So all aspects have actually been underestimated, not looked at, really. We now have a policy at the rural ministry. We're hoping we can work with the urban ministry to mainstream this policy. And it fits very squarely within all of the work that we do around gender mainstreaming. And this is a very core part of what one of the biggest examples of how women are disadvantaged through their life, 20% of their life. As I said, we're still working through the strategy, but we know that we have to intervene at all these points.
Great, yes, thank you. Do you want to keep going? Or? Yes, go ahead, Ashok.
You talked about environmental issues. The last thing we did was realizing that most sanitary napkins are biodegradable. Ours is 85% biodegradable. So where a girl throws away 150 or 200 sanitary napkins into the drain every year. Ours lasts the whole year, so it's 2 of them. So you're talking about 16 grams of non-biodegradable at the end of a year. And
So Ashok, you make it sound very simple, right? Like, here's a product, we'll all
Sounds simple.
solve it. It sounds simple. Is it that simple, Poonam? Is it that simple as...
it's an attempt at a product solution.
No, look,
But
let's
it's
first
tough.
congratulate
It's very
Ashok.
tough.
Yes.
It's very tough. I know.
We
Thank
all
you.
need to congratulate you, and I'm very excited. The only notes I've taken is bacteria-free fabric. So it's really exciting.
Thank you.
But you have to get
Well,
the
wait, you didn't take any notes on what I said?
Shocking.
Shocking. Carry on. Sorry to interrupt.
I loved what you said. It's
Fine,
gone
it's
into my
fine.
heart.
I have my own notes.
So I have to say that it's not simple, the whole process of production, because it is one product that is very bulky to carry. Even when the health ministry was figuring out, I remember 4 years ago, the contract, who it should go to, should it be, there was huge discussion. I happened to be on the committee 5 years ago that decided on giving free sanitary pads to adolescent girls or girls in India. The question, there was huge discussion on whether it should be locally made, should women's groups be involved, and so on and so forth. But I don't believe that is the job of the government to mobilize women's groups across the country to produce. It has to be some entrepreneur like Ashok, who we hope will dedicate every minute of his life after having been so moved by this issue. And given that this is an issue, like a McDonald's, if you can get your bacteria-free fabric and get, give a franchise to women of this country, and today technology is there to do it. So the bulk issue will be dealt with. It's not simple. Bulk is the big issue. And disposal is the other issue which Madhu raised. So it's not simple. Can you imagine thousands and millions of sanitary pads on the sites in slums and villages across India? I don't believe we can talk about sanitary pads without simultaneously talking about disposal.
Yeah.
And incinerators. Why can't we have wine if on a incinerator? Let's have them. If we're going to have sanitary pads, so let's work on the best technology for the disposal in more ways than one. Finally, I think with sanitary pads, the big issue is not just taxation, but it is to make it a necessary. It's like having your medicine when you're ill. It has to be seen differently. So it is still a complex issue, is my scattered answer to your specific
go ahead, Madhu.
question. And finally, just one thing I want to say. Why are women taxed a week every month?
Yeah.
Every sanitary pad they use, remember, they're paying 12% taxes. Government has brought it down to 12.5 to 10 in the GST. What a favor to women of India. What a favor.
Yeah.
We really need to raise that. I'm reiterating and repeating.
Yeah, go
I
ahead,
think
Madhu.
one action point we should take on is definitely that as a group we need to send some sort of a petition or raise this awareness on the need to take away all this tax. I think that's a call to action that all of us can agree on. But I do want to say that behavior change is a huge part of it, and breaking that social norm. And you will find that the more conversation you have, the more easy it becomes for women to access sanitary napkins. That's a very important part across the sanitation value chain. So across behavior on how to use it, behavior on the fact that some women are undergoing a special period in their lives, and on the disposal part as well. Because you have to make this a normal part of waste. Shouldn't be seen as something, I believe, it shouldn't be seen as something that's a biomedical waste, has to be treated very differently, because then we're never going to get rid of this problem. And whether it's incinerators, whether they're safe or not, that needs to be determined. But really, standards on the products have to be instituted. And I feel like commercial companies, it is on them to find us the best solution for a biodegradable product.
Yeah, so Radhika, I don't know if you want to add anything, and then I can move to Ashok.
I mean, I think I was just like, because I'm taking my notes. I was just, no, you won't. Well, not till the end of today.
Let me take
Yes, take notes, please, everybody. I hope you're typing away. No, I was just thinking that, as a comedian, when I have talked about this issue on stage at a comedy show, and like you guys, typically what happens with comedy, especially if it's a female comedian, the audience is sort of self-selected already. It's people who are fairly broad-minded and progressive, and they want to see a woman talk, so even more so, I would say. They are. And there are a lot of women in the audience. That's the other thing. But yet, every time, and I performed the show about 150 times, and this was my opening monologue, and it was a risky one, because it was a topic that I knew we didn't like talking about at all. And I always thought that if I had more women in the audience, it would be like nothing, like, oh my God, this is going to be hilarious, they're going to love it. But in fact, sometimes I had the opposite problem, where the discomfort was so high in the women that it just made everyone uncomfortable. The guys who might have giggled were like, okay, there's no way I'm laughing now. And, some of the other women were sort of sitting around there waiting for it to end. So I do believe that the stigma and the shame attached to it, and the sexualization of very young girls over getting their period it's like, I don't want to get too political here, but, if at 12 you tell your daughter that, shh, don't tell anyone, and you hide this thing, and it's like, put her in a burqa already, Like, we keep acting like we don't do that to our girls. We all do that to our girls at some level. Yeah.
No, that's actually very helpful. And Ashok, maybe you can speak to, so Radhika's saying take it head on. I think if you look at your Give 5 campaign, I don't know how many of you have seen it, but you're kind of wondering, I wonder what this is about. And it's not that approach. And a little bit of, let's speak to the role of the private sector versus the government, because I think, it's complex to the extent that in this value chain is the role of private sector to cut all the way across. Or is there a role for the taxes and the government to fund the incinerating side and the disposal side, similar to, in sanitation, it's not always solved with the private sector. So can you speak a bit to both?
I'll step back a minute to something Madhu talked about, which is educating people to use this. My grandmother used cloth. My mother used cloth, nada and cloth. She taught my sister to use nada and cloth. Until my sister got her first job, and I clearly remember that, she couldn't afford to buy sanitary napkins. So we took that into account and said, create a period panty. Right? So effectively, it's a modern version of a nada and a cloth. It still means education, but it reduces the education. What you're saying is, instead of tying a nada and tying a cloth, here's a ready-made piece. You put on, take off, wash, put back. So we try to minimize the behavior change to make it as easy as possible. And again, instead of throwing away 200 a year, we're talking about throwing away 2 a year.
So I think, Neera, to your point, it's very important for the private sector to engage across the value chain. They're very important. The government has to create an enabling environment for the private sector to engage by creating the right standards, by creating the right tax environment, for sure, and by creating the infrastructure that's necessary. So where they are playing, but without private sector changing the product, playing a very, very effective role in changing people's behavior, doing the conversation around it, not hiding it, not making ads that sort of insinuate that somebody has a period, but just come out boldly and talk.
Blue blood that we all bleed.
Yeah. It's red blood, it's blood. That's what it is, and talk about it. I remember some of my Western friends, their daughters actually celebrated. They have a party the day that they have their periods, so that they can talk about it. And everyone's invited. Yeah. Everyone knows what's happened. Great. It's not a taboo topic, or keep it quiet. It's only you and me, daughter, who'll know about this, and we have to keep it from the men folk. Of course, it has to be a family issue, but it's a normal issue. So what? A boy's voice breaks, as Radhika says, and a girl has her periods. End of story.
Okay. Let me break the communication into two. The communication that goes to the user and the NGO is a very simple demo in every single language, which literally spells it out as ABC. What we use on TV is to wake people up, and we looked for the emotional trigger, and the emotional trigger to women was, because she wasn't aware of it, and you're right, it's a little too subtle, is that girls are missing 5 days of school. So the entire thing is, girls are missing 5 days of school, they're missing 5 days of life. They're missing 5 days which could change their career and their dreams. So,
but are you spelling out why they're missing school?
We did. But It's a little too subtle, but it was really
need to be
meant.
bold.
But that was meant for the educated audiences to say, come and contribute, because the truth is, this is such a big job. You know, believe me, I can't do this alone. You need the help of every single person you can get. The problem is huge. In fact, I was talking to Ajit and saying we should all meet up and say, how can we do things together, improve it, get it cheaper, move it further. So I really plead for all the help. The communication is not enough.
I'm going to open it up for questions from any of you.
It's a big deal.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi. I guess it's been a very comprehensive, group here because, everyone brings in a different perspective. But I do want to touch upon Madhu's point, which is around disposal. Because we are introducing now these sanitary napkins and what we realize, and we work on, in urban slums, on public and community toilets, and most of these sanitary napkins are shoved in, where by the toilet window or, huge drainage issues around that. So we also need to create awareness around that. So I was wondering if you could comment on that or bring into awareness as to what has been done already possibly and what needs to be done.
I think a lot needs to be done. Right. Just even the recognition that women need a safe place to dispose of sanitary napkins. And then the whole idea of who's going to take that out, because there are people who'll say, well, I'll do everything, but I'm not going to touch that sanitary waste, right? I'll clean the toilet. I'm okay with cleaning, fecal matter, but I'm not going to clean sanitary waste. So yes, there needs to be a huge awareness. I'll tell you an example from a government meeting I was in, and finally they said, well, women aren't using community toilets, so we're building them, but women aren't using them, or public toilets. And so we even put bins there, a big favor they did. There was a common entrance. It was very open. So there were very obvious reasons to me as a woman. The meeting was all men. And it was very obvious to me why women weren't going to use that community toilet, because everything was so open. It was right in the middle of the street. There was no place for her to even tie her sari if she came out of the toilet. She was right in the street. So, but listen to the solution. The solution was, why don't we take those bins out and we'll open it for the men to use both sides, because women don't want to use it. And I said, maybe I have a great idea. Why don't you actually ask the women why they're not using it and figure it out? So I'm just saying that we have a large sensitization to do. It's not just with the women, but it's with the men who do this planning of infrastructure. So you're absolutely right. But they've not even started cracking that yet. It doesn't figure in the sanitation discourse.
We have a question here, yeah.
In terms of the supply chain, I was wondering if the panel could comment on the local Kirana shop. This is where most women go to buy their sanitary products. And let's say you do have a whole lot of private players coming in developing some very innovative products. How do you actually get the Kirana shop guy to tell you about them? Because when you go to him, it is an extremely uncomfortable conversation that he has with the woman. Give me a sanitary napkin. Quickly, it's like the quickest transaction. It's better than a Formula One pit crew. That sanitary napkin, the packet is given to you, it's tied up in black. You have maybe, I think, about 5 seconds to choose. So how do you then bring somebody that local in the supply chain into your conversation?
So I'm going to have Ashok speak a bit to the distribution channels. I don't know if you are able to address going all the way locally or...
No, I completely agree with you. It is hugely embarrassing for a woman to walk into a chemist shop with 20 men around, and what we've attempted to do is not sell this commercially. And we're really looking at the bottom of the pyramid, where we're talking to cloth users. You can't change a pad user. A pad user is used to throwing something away. It's very tough to, you're talking about a mindset change there. It's really difficult. But to talk to a cloth user who's used to washing and reusing cloth, it becomes fairly easy to, then she's not disposing anything, and we use NGOs as our distribution system. The truth is, do I trust my chemist? No, I don't. He's going to prescribe to me what he's going to make the maximum money on, and he'll embarrass me, if I go and ask for something. But I trust my NGO.
Yeah.
The NGOs are working with these women's groups, have a relationship of trust, of responsibility. And if you create a model where we ask the NGO to take some money from the final user, if she can't afford $150, take 100. If she can't afford 100, take 50. But create a rolling bank so the NGO has a reason to have an income coming in, right? A rolling bank to buy more of them, and a motivation to actually work to this change.
Yeah,
So-
Radhika, and then I'll come
Sorry.
to Poonam and then to you,
Just,
Madhu.
just to touch
Thanks,
on what
Ashok.
you said, you know, I have personally found that a lot of the embarrassment comes from us. So if we enter a store and are like very furtive about this whole ST purchase business, then they will also act furtive, because what is he going to do? Yeah, he's one fellow who owns a kirana shop. He doesn't want to offend anybody by like, Madam, hamara paas 3 hai, dekho kitna. He's not going to make that sales pitch. You are going to have to ask for it. So like literally before, I'd done something else on, you know, I had to do another piece on something like this. So I'd actually gone to my neighborhood store and I said, sab dikhao aur sabsa sasta wala dekhna hai. That fellow went, he brought everything and he showed me, he was very patient with me. But I have to admit, when I was younger, I purchased my pads the same way everyone else does. Now I practically don't need the pads anymore, so I've become very brave. But I'm just saying, literally when I was an 18-year-old, it was different.
Poonam?
I wish girls
Yeah.
had the confidence to embarrass
Yeah.
the chemist, to
Yeah.
go out there and, that's right, embarrass them.
I think
why embarrass?
it's not
Then
even
he
embarrassed,
learn-
it's like,
no, embarrass
just
the
ask.
chemist.
yeah, exactly, or whoever. Like, I
Why?
think that we have to own this
Yeah.
completely, and then it will become easier for the others to, I think,
And I
go
think
with us.
communications has a
Easier
big
to say.
part to play with
Easier to
it. That's
say.
what we're saying about social norms. It's like
Yeah.
asking for Anison. You want to say, okay, ये aspirin का brand अच्छा नहीं है, दूसरा चाहिए. So it should be the same. I want a sanitary napkin, but ये वाला brand अच्छा है भैया कि दूसरा अच्छा है. आपको मालूम है? क्या मालूम है इसके बारे में? Etc. So it has to become a conversation that we initiate, as Radhika
Ourselves,
says,
yeah.
but also we have to have the surrounding environment talk about
support,
it
yeah.
as if it's a normal issue, not something that you're hiding behind.
Yes, Poonam, and then I'll go to the next
Precisely.
question.
Actually, some of what I've been trying to say has been said. We have to normalize this
Yeah.
issue. We have to position this issue in many different contexts. First, that it's a normal experience to have. It is a menstrual blood is not impure. It is the same
Exact.
process that leads to procreation. We will not have people in this world if it wasn't for menstrual blood. It starts there. It's about, I know procreation can be a negative word for some, but on the whole, it's not. So let's go that route. But also, we have to absolutely do massive campaigns on changing the social norms, as Madhu also said. And behavior, as I said, will change when social norms are questioned and changed. The process will be automatic. India's young girl today is more ready for a change than any of us can believe.
Yep.
And that is our experience from Main Kuch Bhi Kar Sakti, you know, this behavior change communication that we rolled out. It's not because PFI did a brilliant behavior change, entertainment, education program. I believe it's more about the fact that women and girls are ready for a change. In 52 episodes, if 20% less women in this country are saying it's not all right for their husbands to beat them. They picked up the 8% women picked up the most difficult thing to negotiate is a contraceptive. But if they pick up the courage to negotiate a contraceptive with their husband in 52 episodes, we can do a lot, you know, in terms of changing the social norms and behavior towards this issue. And I want to say that Sushma Dureja is here. She leads a program called RKSK in the Ministry of Health. And within that program, sexual and reproductive health is one program. And there is, since we helped design the program called Satya, there is a whole section on menstruation. But I'd like to suggest, since people have very creative materials, I was sitting on that table earlier and people were talking about making 2-minute film and 1-minute film. We need a lot more information for the young people of India, not only through Sushmaji, but through the net. There is so much opportunity. There is, at least we have a feasibility report that a very leading company did for us on digital media that you can reach 200 million young people with messaging. And you know, the world has changed, not because we've done a lot, but because now, as I always say, the other half knows how the better half lives. And the aspirations are very different. And our young girls and boys have very different aspirations for themselves. And a lot of mothers have very different aspirations for their daughters. So let's do massive and invest. I'd like to say to the donors, invest in behavior change. And finally, may I say to you, it's great that you work through NGOs, but what about our Ashas? We have 800,000 Ashas in this country. And Asha's responsibility is on behalf of the health ministry to distribute sanitary pads along with condoms. So I'd really like to request you to immediately see if Asha and you can have a partnership. It'll be 8,000 women.
We have
800,000.
Great.
I know.
So we're running out of time. I wanted to have some closing thoughts. Poonam shared her closing thoughts very well. Thank you. If I can ask each of you, so our dialogues are called Pushing the Boundaries on Menstrual Hygiene Management, and thank you all of you for your perspectives. But just one piece of advice or one area that you feel we should leave focused on, and then we'll close up the panel. Any of you can go ahead.
So I do think I want to reiterate what Poonam started, that we do need a call to action on the GST. We absolutely have to have zero tax on sanitary napkins. That's number one, because you do have to increase access to it, for sure. And we have to parallelly have the government enable the right standards for products, and commercial companies need to adhere to that and find innovative ways to handle the waste. So if you create the waste, how are you going to handle that waste? You have a huge market that will open up. If only a few percentage, 10%, 12% have access to sanitary napkins, that's a huge market. And if we are creating that, as Ashok has done, others need to do the same and find that innovation. But let's at least do as one takeaway from here, sign a petition to have this tax taken away, because that's the first step.
I was just thinking that, you know, for me, I've always found that if something is affecting me in any way, the moment I come out and say it and put it out there, it tends to lose its power. And that's the way I feel about women and their period. If every single one of us decides that this is not a problem, I'm not going to be uncomfortable or weirded out by it myself. And, you know, when you have your period, like, make a point to, like, tell somebody, make them uncomfortable about it. It's like, oh, I have my period today. A little uncomfortable right now, but I'm glad I showed up here nonetheless. It's okay, everyone will slowly get used to it. It's like a cough. It's not a big deal.
Ashok?
You talked about communication, and we need to find some concerted method, because what happens is people do 20 different things in 20 different directions, and it all thins out. It is a way of creating
Key messages.
a key message, because the messages need to go out to various segments. In fact, you can slice this market into about 5 or 6 segments, and each one needs a slightly different message.
But I think
So
the first one message
I'm
is to
happy to
break the
help.
social norm on this.
Yep.
To break the silence on menstruation.
Culture of silence.
Yeah,
has
this
to-
culture of silence or culture of whispering, or the whisper part of it needs to go away.
Yes.
They
Well,
named it
Change the
Whisper.
branding. Change
Yeah.
the branding.
Yeah, exactly.
No, add the brand of the blood. Menstrual blood is pure.
Can I have a shot?
I want a campaign.
yeah,
of
so
that.
let's all yell together. Well, thank you very much for a wonderful panel and for all your contributions.
Invite Dr. Sushma Dureja onto the stage, along with Neera from PATH, who will be having a discussion for the next 15-20 minutes.
I think what I'd like to start us off by talking about is really about access. You know, how is the Ministry of Health involved with this whole awareness and access bit, which is absolutely critical for this dialogue to move forward and to see real action on the ground. If you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, at the outset, let me congratulate the organizers of this meet for the discussion on this important topic that we all need to address today with open mind and open thoughts. That I heard the first discussion, that was very interesting. Ours is not going to be so all that interesting.
I'm sure we're looking forward to it.
It's going to be more of programmatic. Let me start by saying how I have perceived the word menstruation and how the meaning and the relevance has changed for me over the last almost 5 decades, I would say, little less than 5 decades. When I entered the second decade of my life, I was probably the youngest among my class fellows. I cleared my 11th standard at the age of 15. So you can very well understand I was much younger. So when they used to talk in hushed tones about the menstruation, and they would, when I tried to enter into their conversation, they'll mystify it further. They would tell me, you'll understand it only once you undergo. You have it yourself. So I just used to wonder what exactly it is. Then there was a chapter in our textbook. Many of you must be having that chapter, the people of my age group. So I was just wondering one day this chapter will be covered in our school. I was in all girls school. Still, our teacher very conveniently skipped that chapter.
We've all been through that.
Even the day that chapter was to be covered, we were all waiting. Today she's going to talk about it. But then next chapter came. So nobody talked about it, discussed about it. So growing up a little further, when I entered medical college, menstruation was just like any other physiological process, digestion, breathing, and all that. That was the normalization of menstruation, just considering it as a normal physiological process of the female body. I took up gynecology as my specialization, and I was working as a clinician for 30 years, practicing gynecology. Menstruation again became very important for a woman in terms of her reproductive capabilities. So menstruation had different meanings. Now, being in the public health sector, it means very differently and much more meaningful than what I had known it as for all these years. And today, talking about pushing the boundaries on menstrual hygiene, it makes far more sense in terms of today's scenario.
Absolutely.
So it's important that we discuss it, because besides the government departments, as you just listed them, Health Ministry being the nodal department, then Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation, that has got the mandate on menstrual hygiene management under Swachh Bharat scheme. Then HRD Ministry, Human Resource Development Ministry, which is looking at the schools, the adolescents who are attending the schools, then Women and Child Development. So these are the partners at the governmental level. Besides this, there are many organizations who are actively working on this subject.
Well, Ministry of Finance, if we want to do something about the tax.
We are already into it. We are already into it. I'll be talking about it a little later. So we are just providing the mechanisms. It's the contribution of all of you. Those who are working on this issue, may it be because for the communication, may it be the marketing strategies, or working on different products that we intend to bring in our market. As we talked about the biodegradable products, making them available at the easiest, through the easiest route. So it's what I should say is all of us who need to put our efforts together to bring this issue, which really affects majority of our women. If you look at the census, it's only 15 to 20% of our women who have access to sanitary napkins, or even for that matter, even safe hygienic menstrual product. We do not say, we at the ministry do not say use a sanitary napkin. We say it has to be a safe hygienic menstrual product. It could be a simple cotton cloth which has been washed with soap, dried in the sun, and which is good enough to be reused.
And I must tell you that the entire sector, all these people who are sitting here, all the partners also believe in that. It's all about hygiene and safety.
Yeah.
It is not about selling sanitary pads. I mean, that's not...
Yeah, that's exactly what is menstrual hygiene management. how do we manage? It could be any product. And starting from their procurement or their preparation to their appropriate use and finally their disposal. We are concerned about everything, not only the provision of sanitary napkins.
I wanted to delve a little bit on the disposal, Sushma ji. You might have had some thoughts around this because this is a question which has been in our minds for a long time, and the question is that what is the rest of the world doing? This is not something which is specific to India. The whole world is using sanitary pads. So what are they doing about disposal, and what can we learn from them, and how are you planning to sort of deal with this issue?
We looked at the literature, we tried to find out, because these questions are persistently coming up to us regarding the biodegradable products, so that they don't need active disposal, then the use of incinerator or proper method of disposal. I could not find much in the literature, or my team could not find much how the Western countries are going about it. Yes, incinerators are known to work, but programmatically, our country is very different from the Western countries. They have the public toilets, they have the availability of sanitary napkins in the public toilets, in the schools, at their workplaces. Can we really afford it? Or can we really, it's not a matter of affording it, can we really practically do it? What about the sanitary napkin vending machines? Looking at a smaller scale is absolutely perfect. But if you want to do it at a public health, as a public health intervention, is one of the most difficult. We started working on it. We got ideas from some of the major suppliers of sanitary napkins, how they can help us. We got a blueprint prepared for it. But where should we place these vending machines? Who will run them? Who will fill them up? Who will collect it's a social marketing scheme that we are having right now. Who will collect the money? How will refilling be done? How to ensure all these things? So similar thing come for the incinerator. How to dispose them of? Where to place the incinerator? We had got every year we provide funds to the state for this menstrual hygiene scheme, as we call it. So some of the states even asked for funds for incinerators. Our next question was, where do you want to place them? Schools? But the school is open for 6 hours only. And it is available only for those girls who are attending the school. And how about the other women who need to use it? Where should it be? In a village? In a corner in a village? Or where else? Who will run it? Putting up incinerator is fine. Maybe our ministry gives the cost. But running it, that becomes an issue.
But again, to Ashok's point of reusable pads or of menstrual cups, for example, and other products. So, interestingly, when we talk about products per se, we talk about a lot of products.
Yeah, there are a whole range of products.
But when we talk programmatically, we kind of narrow down to disposable sanitary pads. So isn't there a disconnect there of some sorts, ma'am, which we need to probably address at some point?
The main aim of our program, what our ministry is running, is to sensitize the community. It's the sensitization, awareness generation. And we have picked up these adolescent girls because this is the beginning of menstrual age. And once they develop the habit of using the right type of menstrual hygiene product, probably they'll continue it for their lifelong. So that's why we picked up these adolescents. And our basic aim is to create awareness. Making the sanitary napkins available at subsidized rates to the rural girls is only a part of it. We have come up with beautiful IC BCC material as a 360-degree that you might have seen it on the TV also, or otherwise it's available on our website. Beti hui hai badi to khushiyan kyun na bade. That is normalizing menstruation. It's a beautiful TV series, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, that depicts the girl growing up. There are 3 TV series. You can have a look at it from our website, Ministry of Health's website. So it's basically our aim is to create awareness. We are all aware of the ill health effects that may be associated with unhygienic products. So our main aim is to create awareness. We are very well aware of the fact that the multiple products available in the market to suit everybody's need.
Before we go into the tax bit, which I'm going to drag you back into, I'd like to just ask you in terms of, this whole partnership or collaboration, because there's a lot of people in this room who are working on this issue. There are people who are not able to make it today also. How can we actually work together with the government to really make this happen? Because this can't be done by one or the other. This needs to be a collaborative effort. So any thoughts on that, Sushma ji?
Anybody, and as I said initially, we are all working as a team, maybe the government departments, the NGOs, UN agencies, or the people who are involved in awareness generation activities. We have to work as a team. Nobody can work alone. The strategies, the policies, the guidelines, the government can come up with, but actual implementation, they are the important cogs in the wheel. All of us, all of those who are present in one way or other, they are contributing to the program. They can always coordinate with the ministry to come up with thoughts and ideas that will be beneficial for the program. We keep getting communications from various self-help groups or NGOs who are working on certain products, maybe a biodegradable product, or they have something in mind that they share with us. Anything that is worthwhile is always considered positively in the ministry.
So more important call to action for this this group to actually reach out to Sushma ji. She's given an open invitation, try and bring it all together and try and work collaboratively.
Not me, but the ministry.
Yeah. So with the Ministry of Health.
Yeah, anybody is, because we understand the need, the importance of this issue, and we want to work together on the same.
Thank you.
That is one thing. Now,
would you like to tell us about what we can do about the tax, ma'am? Because that's an important issue that came up in the morning discussion, is being talked about for the last few weeks across the sector. And GST they're having a conversation actually today in a room here in IHC around GST. So how can we move this?
We are all for waiving of GST for this product. And we have been receiving representations from the parliamentarians, from various groups, agencies who are working on this issue. And considering the need for the same, we have even forwarded these requests to the Ministry of Finance.
So we are very hopeful.
For due consideration.
Of course, but we are very hopeful that this
because we are not the decision-taking ministry. So, but for the favorable decision saying that this must be considered favorably, all those request letters have been duly forwarded to the Finance Ministry. Let's see. Let's look for the results.
Let's push all the buttons on this.
Yeah. Some of the agencies had even written to us, give total GST exemption on the biodegradable products and partial on the non-biodegradable. What I'll say, it should be total for all. And the reason that we can think of or we can really advocate is when there is no GST on the contraceptives.
Right, right.
Then we can think of waiving of this GST on these sanitary devices also.
Thank you so
but
much.
The last word is the final decision lies with the Finance Ministry.
We will try and convince them on our side. We are just about out of time. 2 questions is what I'm allowed. Sorry, I have somebody waving away ferociously from there. So I guess you get a chance just for making your way through that crowd. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, ma'am. I work with Change.org. I hope I don't need a mic.
No, you're very audible.
Yeah, I work with Change.org, and on the Change.org is where the online petition is there, where over 3 lakh people have asked for taxation to be waived. We have met you and the
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about.
Right.
We have met earlier.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for writing to the Finance Ministry on this. But clearly, we are 1 month away from the GST. And you spoke about access. You spoke about how less and less of women, because of the cost aspect, are just not having access.
Even today, I forwarded one big bunch of papers to be processed in our ministry for putting up to finance ministry. We are getting repeated requests. Let's see what finally the finance ministry decides.
Yeah. We're getting multiple representations over and over from those 3 lakh people, and they're sincerely hoping that this will be a huge health agenda and not just a finance agenda. Because if we're talking about institutionalizing and giving incentives for larger scale production of biodegradable products, menstrual products, clearly the petition also asks for biodegradable to be incentivized and pushed and large scale production happening. I'm sure there are a lot of biodegradable producers here who need that push, and that taxation is clearly going to give them that. And since this is also a very ordinary citizen movement that's building on change.org,
yeah, as I
we
said,
hope.
We are trying, we did our bit. I'll not say we tried our best because the ultimate decision finally lies with the finance.
I think Sushma ji is on our side. That's the feeling I get.
Absolutely,
Can I say
absolutely.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, no two ways of looking at that.
Being in the health ministry, we are all concerned about the health of the women.
Absolutely.
I don't know how much difference will it make for the in the cost of the product, but still it's worth trying.
Yeah.
And the logic remains simple.
Yeah. I think the point here is that rather than looking at numbers and loss to the exchequer, this needs to be treated as a wider, health mandate of the government itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
One more question, then we have to close, I believe. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Just keep it brief because I've got these timekeepers who are saying.
No, absolutely brief. So while we discuss the GST, there is something else I want to draw the attention to. Why aren't we looking, or why aren't we discussing the accountability that the private sector that is pushing disposable pads into the community? Why aren't we talking about their extended producer responsibility? I mean, that should be, I think, a prime agenda that the government should take. I will not see the private sector here in bright light.
We do not control the private sector as far as the production and all those goes. That is a different agency, different department of the government which has to see. As far as our ministry is concerned, we are more concerned about the what we make available under our own system.
I completely understand, ma'am. The ministry has certain roles which don't probably are in sync with the other ministries. But on the whole, as a nation, why don't we push the bigger MNCs producing these kind of disposable pads to ensure an extended producer responsibility? Why aren't they responsible? Or why aren't they made responsible to take care of the garbage that they are pushing?
We really, it's a good point, and I think we should take a note.
Absolutely, but as I said, this comes under drugs and cosmetics department of the ministry.
Yes.
It doesn't come under the health.
Regulating waste disposal in India is still a challenge. I mean, we are still far away from a Swachh Bharat. Let alone even hospital waste, we are still far away from getting where we want to be. But I think it's a good point, and we should make it part of our agenda.
Absolutely, you are absolutely right.
Thank you so much. Sushma ji, any last comments that you want to make? I think you've been pretty
I think
straightforward.
we covered most of the things. The last thing is there's a long way to go, and we need to work together to achieve.
We will all work together.
Yeah, that's important. We can give you the basic framework, the strategy, or do the code work, but majority of the work has to be done by the organizations like you are representing, and this because there's a lot to do. Even if you look at the number of menstruating adolescent girls is around 125 million. I'm just talking about the girls. If you can include the women, it becomes around 400 million. We have to cater to needs of so many.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Important from a demographic dividend perspective also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sort of a preach to the choir mentality. We've seen each other before numerous times. So we always wonder where are the voices for some of the people who this is a real serious issue. And in that regard, we as a team for a while were trying to make sure we could get a representation from someone, from an adolescent basically. And initially when we started the process, we were looking through and we got kind of lucky through the whole process, and a big thanks to Wash United for this. So I just want to say we're excited to have Aranya Johar with us today. She is a viral sensation. She is a Mumbai-based poet whose poetry sheds light on the double standards of society and issues relating to women. Her piece called A Brown Girl's Guide to Gender has gone viral, and the recent piece she did with Wash United called To Bleed Without Violence has over 60 million views in one day, with celebrities like Akshay Kumar also sharing it. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to ask her to come on stage and please do her piece.
Dot, 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 dot. And that's the minimum amount of times a healthy woman is told her biology limits her mentally, physically, and emotionally. You see, since a young age, I was taught menstruation was supposed to be kept in the hidden and whispered. So I'm constantly paranoid, carrying whisper, stay free and more, just so I could stay stress-free, hoping no one whispers behind my red-stained jeans. But I was born into a house of privilege. My parents taught me that my periods don't limit me. The only thing that could limit me would be my mentality. So on the days I stay in bed because I'm bleeding out of my legs, my brother tells me to go be productive. He tells me, there's a world out there I'm yet to conquer. But I'd say I got lucky because my football coach taught us it was all right to bleed. With wounds, we'd get the bench, but with menstrual cycles, never less than the lead. And I could tell you with pride that he single-handedly changed the life of a couple 16-year-olds just because he taught us our biology was normal, just because he taught us our biology was healthy. In the 6th grade, Shashwati ma'am gave the sex talk to my class without separating boys or girls. Sensitized boys to puberty and growth, and she introduced us to a whole new world. That year, when I stained my uniform, the very same boys handed me their hoodies to wear on my waist. They told me it was my Superwoman week. Because if my body is made of stardust and my skin matches land and my body's geology can make continents tremble and mountains move, you aren't allowed to tell me that I should feel shy because I paint a town red for a week every month of my life. You see, I've been given a chance to believe we could live in a world where we could talk about this openly. We could live in a world where women are taught to bleed with pride. In a world where something this common and natural doesn't force us to hide. In a world where we celebrate the only blood that bleeds without violence. In a world where pads aren't wrapped and monologues aren't silenced. In a world where you and I can just be as we are, irrespective of our genitals and irrespective of our bodies. Then we must. So, dot, 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 dot. That's the minimum amount of times we can encourage and empower a woman and make sure a period doesn't equal a stop. Thank you. I'd just like to mention that I come from a background of privilege, like a lot of the people in this room. And we talk about these things, we talk from a point of privilege. We come from places where we can talk about this. We have sensitized families, friends. But we need to reach out to more than that. And I'd love to see how we could do that with a room full of people. Thank you.